Thanks for tuning in to your favorite content creator, UTV. To find out more, follow us on our social media platforms: YouTube UTV124, Facebook UTV124, Instagram UTV124, Twitch UTV124, TikTok UTV_124, and Flow TV channel 124. Remember, UTV, TV for you.
The opinions expressed on this TV program by the hosts, co-hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions and responsibility of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of UTV or its affiliates.
Hello and welcome. This is the Revolution. Today is the 23rd of July 2021. It is a Friday. We are only 3 days away from the day of reckoning, Judgment Day, our day of liberation if we choose it, the day that we get to set a new course, and as they say, the best way to predict the future is to create it. I thank you all for joining in what will be my final show in terms of the Revolution program. I said when I started, and I'm honoring my word, that this show would run until elections or until another form of revolution would come, however it would come. And no, I'm not afraid of the word revolution, because it does not mean violence as many of the elite classes around the world would like you to believe. Yes, there have been violent revolutions, but I've always been preaching a revolution of the mindset of the people of this country, all sons and daughters of St. Lucia who love the land that gave us birth. That said, I am so happy to have been on this journey, and I'm so happy that you have joined me. I cannot begin to express the level of support that I've gotten. And as you know, the only way this show could have ever worked is if you helped me. And the truth is the only way that I could have pursued. I never pretended to be objective. I don't go like Timothy Polio and with all my fake objectivity bullshit. I've always tried to keep it real like Norbert. No, I've tried to be as honest as I can, follow where the facts take me, for better, for worse. Sadly, this government has given no shortage of fodder, but St. Lucians have grown. We have grown by force and necessity being the mother of invention. We have found new ways to innovate. I want to thank, if I don't get the chance to throughout this super long show, we'll probably be heading somewhere into about 3 o'clock, because today is about closing arguments. It's also about the transcendent issues, and it's also about what's happening right now. Now, I do have shout-outs, so I want to get to shout-outs. Shout-outs to all the police, fire, and correctional officers who head to the polls today to cast their vote. You shall not forget, you shall not be fooled. Stand tall, because you are now the tip of the spear, leading our mission to rescue our democracy from tyranny. Happy birthday to my amazing niece, Jasmine Hunt. Yep, celebrating her 5th birthday today. Greetings coming from your father, Adrian, mother, Denise, grandparents, Sir Julian and Lady Jennifer, as well as the entire family, including Christiane, who is flying out to Texas today and has checked in at UNORA as we speak. Shout outs to Chanel Delise and the CCSS Gutterside crew. Also, advanced birthday greetings going out to the Mayor of Independence City herself. Happy birthday in advance to Vero. Wishing you a wonderful 82nd birthday. 82 not out, going for a century. Greetings coming from the entire UTV team. Your children, Petra, Jackie, Mandy, Terrell, Lucia and Ezra, as well as your grandchildren, who want you to know that they love you very, very, very much. And I really don't know how to say it when it comes to the cockalorum. Folks, right now as we speak, the vending booths on Ancillary and Ancillary Waterfront have been demolished to make way for the construction of whatever it is that Fede said he was going to do for the last 5 years. It is a scheme for them to put money in the hands of young people, but they have destroyed the vending booth area because Fede also killed ancillary fish fry, because once he could not prop it up with Sandals money, he had no marketing, no tourism linkages developed for ancillary. What is worse is that whoever wins the election will inherit a situation where there are a number of vendors, a fishing and vending community and agriculture community, which has no ability to host the fish fry until whatever has been destroyed, whatever is either to replace it or whatever has to happen, will come to fruition. So basically, Fede, on the eve of the elections, 5 days and less before the elections, has basically crippled an economically depressed community already. I don't know, boy. I don't know. I can only hope that the people vote for justice for themselves above all else. Shout out to Brother David, aka Hurricane, and to Uncle Juban and his wife, always listening. Thank you. Coming from Empress Bobo. Birthday greetings going out to Alika Frederick, Kershel Bikar, and Sunita Daniel, all and of course the Radio Dungargan himself, Tony Paul, wishing you all a wonderful day, a blessed life, love, peace, and happiness. Shout outs to the general manager of Sandals, Mr. Anderson. Y'all say y'all not political, but in trying to influence voters, y'all will tell y'all staff when you're going to vote. When you're going to vote, don't forget when the country is shut down, the Prime Minister Shasney is the one that left the hotel open to give us jobs. So know what we're doing. Don't worry, one day justice will come for all of those downtrodden, intimidated, and fear culture oppressed people working in the hotel accommodation sector around St. Lucia. They need justice in the Labor Department, and we need to have an entire show that is dedicated to telling the stories of all that the plantations by the sea have brought us in terms of the negative treatment of St. Lucian workers, even though these people get concessions from successive governments up the wazoo for 30, 40, 50 years. Akina's Bar, good afternoon to you. Also, Timam's Bar and Barron's Drive, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much for locking in. Ben and Kay's Mini Mart in Deriso, thank you very much for locking in. And B's Mart in Deriso as well. Shout outs to Ahavi Alphonse, Jermaine, Leah, Frederick Smith, Rudolph Springer, Whitworth Francis, James Donut, and all the rest of the staff over at West Indies General Insurance, as well as Hunt Shipping, locked in and ready for elections. Birthday greetings going out to Shabelle, James of Viewfort, from Sylvani, Judith, Jarell, and Ninan, wishing you many, many, many more blessings. Positive Vibes Youth Group of Deriso, your work has been consistent, and yet the Prime Minister has never sought to feature you. You are appreciated. The people down there definitely want to send a shout out to you. Hold strong. Fellow St. Lucians, we the pensioners are having a problem receiving our pension money, which was due yesterday. When we called the office yesterday, they informed that the pension will be paid after elections. Folks, pensioners already have salaries on what they get in terms of their pension is inadequate. Even if you try to adjust for inflation, folks, you know the cost of health care. You know what it takes here and abroad. You know the shortages of medication that this government, because it has not been making its payments to the OECS procurement process, the grouping. So there's a lot of missing medication for heart problems, hypertension, diabetes, and all other things. And these people need to get their money on time. And like Rufus Busquet said just yesterday, you can tell the conscience of a society by how it treats its seniors who built this country and how it treats its children. And both ways, Shasney has been literally attacking both the children, the students, and the seniors. And this must stop. So do not think about this election purely as red versus yellow. Think about who will make sure to prioritize St. Lucians first in their own country. The only place that St. Lucians should be guaranteed that they are first priority. Folks, I don't know if you've noticed, Work on the Badlil has stopped. It's been weeks now, work on the Badlil has stopped. What an urgent piece of roadway that we have. They gave it to Fresh Start by direct award, and work on it has stopped. The same way other works have stopped. Even in Rodney Bay, it's a virtual go slow. And yet these are the people that we're given hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts by direct award. Folks, out of 400 lots, Shozelians were offered less than 10% in this, that is how Bradley Felix treats people. Right? A source inside Invest St. Lucia has inferred that someone in St. Lucia has purchased 2 lots on behalf of a CIP passport holder of Eastern Asian origin. That's in Shozella, folks. Your 5 years of Bradley Felix, your 5 years of devastated farming. Over 200 acres of prime agricultural land has been converted to steel and concrete. That's Guy Joseph taking over and plundering that constituency, aided by Pinkley and abetted by Bradley Felix. It has been revealed that some buyers who own property elsewhere were offered land at $5 per square foot. These are more equals. The more equals of the constituency. Gave permission for someone to excavate and sell over 200 truckloads of topsoil at $1,000 per load. This was done at Ballenbush by Guy Joseph's cousin. Yep. 2 months ago, Bradley visited the YEP project with a delegation of white men, developers, Caucasians, whatever you want to call them. Our sources have informed us that the whole area, including private land belonging to one farmer, is being discussed for sale for a restaurant. Friends, family, and foreigners by Bradley Felix as well. Labor supporters, even at death, are being victimized because persons are being offered cheaper burial fees if they vote for Bradley Felix. Yes, Bradley Felix, the one that says he's not a politician. And remember, all those that are talking about legalize it. The only way Shasney is going to legalize marijuana is when the Canadian company is given the land that Shasney has identified for them in Labrie, that used to be the land where the range development was going to go as a project that he messed up before. Felix, why did you abandon Delse farmers on the Mr. Chappie lands? You have sided with the company to destroy livelihoods. Boy, Bradley, anyway, like I said, it's up to the people. A notice to all St. Lucians, in fact, a reminder to all St. Lucians. Guy Joseph said that if they do not finish St. Jude's, the St. Jude's Hospital, the Shasney administration should not be re-elected to government. So when you hear people telling you vote for Labour, vote for the independent candidates, vote for the Green Party, Guy Joseph endorses that 100% because he said that if they do not finish St. Jude's before the end of their term, and they even took extra time, 6 years and 30 days, then the fact of the matter is, listen to Guy Joseph and honor what he has told you. They do not deserve to be re-elected. A notice to all St. Lucians. I don't know if you heard it this morning. Shasney has given his father's Lucian Blue Ocean Company the fisheries complexes for the next 15 years and 10 years of that rent-free. So whether it is in Dennery, whether it is in Vieux-Fort, whether it is in Castries, everywhere around St. Lucia, the Alan Michael Shasney administration is giving the Sir Michael Shasney owned Lucian Blue Ocean Company 15 years lease of all of those properties, 10 years rent-free, and they even put in a clause which says that if the administration changes and anybody wants to break out of this agreement, that they will have to repay the money that would have been accrued over that 15 years. Folks, you realize what is happening here. This morning, as Richard Frederick told us and showed us on Zafenu, right before elections, Alan Shasney and Michael Shasney are making sure that his father at 86 years old will have a stranglehold on fisheries island-wide, continuing to cripple communities like Dennery, where Edmund Estefan supports the privatization of fisheries, in Vieux-Fort and in the other areas where you have fisheries like in Castries, killing off the fishers, forcing them to continue to go and sell on the road in the night like they had to do 20, 30, 40 years ago. And what's even worse is, when Sir Michael passes, Alan Shasney will have completed a full, direct, huge conflict of interest, killing off our fisheries, whereas on top of that, his family already has a stranglehold on agro-produce purchasing. St. Lucia, St. Lucia, listen well. Lastly, I have to find some positive note to finish up. Lastly, shout outs to Laverne Spencer and the entire Lucian crew doing us proud at the Olympics.
These opening ceremonies, this is the Olympic moment for so many of the athletes coming in.
Here comes St. Lucia. And high jumper Laverne Spencer carries the flag along with Jean-Luc Zephyr. Laverne competing in her 4th Olympics.
Yep, that's how far we have to go to find a positive when it comes to this government. And this is what they're obligated to do. And even there were problems with logistics and other elements. So where do we start today, folks? Like I said, I have to deal with the transcendent. I have to deal with the relevance to the time right now. And I have to deal with the inner. And by that I mean the conscience that I have with regard to St. Lucia. So in my final show, I had to decide what it is that I really wanted to portray. And I tried to think of the issue that singularly touches me the most and I think should resonate with most St. Lucians. And I'll get to it. But first, this.
The sugar mills, which were in the hands of private owners, have now been acquired by the government. According to the parliamentary representative for Choiseul, Bradley Felix, some aspects of the nation's heritage need to be protected, noting the sentimental attachment associated with them. A residential structure was already in the process of being built on the property on which the mill is located in the Monsieur community. However, after discussions, the landowner agreed to abandon the project and was compensated for the land.
As a young boy growing up in the community of Choiseul, I was always under the impression that these iconic landmarks actually belonged to government. And it was only sometime, I think it was about 2 years ago, when in driving by, I recognized there was some construction, which appeared to be a house construction, right mere feet away from one of the sugar mills in Monsieur. And then in making some inquiries, I was told that the property had been sold to an individual to construct his home. In doing some additional background check, and I realized that none of the sugar mills actually belong to the Crown.
The MP revealed some of the proposed plans for the two structures, which he says came about following consultation and discussion with the residents of the area.
We would use the structure that the gentleman had already built, which was, he had already built a foundation, he had already put up some walls. We would use the foundation as a platform to where our vendors could actually use it to sell their craft, advertise their craft. When that is not happening, we could also use it as an area where we can do our traditional festivals, whether it be La Marguerite, La Rose. You could have a theater happening there, and we could create a wonderful park where people can have that experience of not just the sugar mill and its story, but there's also the theater part of it.
The Choiseul MP did not indicate a timeline when the ideas for the two mills and the surrounding areas might come to fruition.
Now, I agree and support what Bradley Felix did there perfectly. He said that he appreciated the heritage. He appreciated growing up as a child, that these were iconic, part of our heritage, part of our history, part of our identity. So it does pass a little bit strange for me. It does pass a little bit strange for me that since the land has been acquired, I mean, take a look at the sugar mill in terms of its upkeep since then. Now, this was acquired long before COVID, so I don't understand if it was acquired and it was such a part of the cherished childhood growing up in Choiseul, and it's an iconic symbol. The sugar mills are iconic symbols of the Choiseul landscape and the ridges and everything, and you grew up with that in the backdrop as a tapestry of your life. Then I don't understand. I would have thought, and this is not a huge charge, I'm just saying, I would have thought somebody would have been dealing with the upkeep of it. I'm not saying I expect you to paint it in shocking colors. I'm just saying, you know, take out the pieces of styrofoam, the garbage, the condoms, the pieces of electrical equipment and stuff that are there. But you see, I made sure to reiterate this point because you spoke about your heritage, you spoke about the community, you spoke about the symbolism and what it meant. But a sugar mill, even albeit historic, is man-made. And here we have the pitos that should have been even larger in the backdrop as you looked as a boy looking at the back of Gopito, from Anse Levoyne, from Choiseul, from all over Lafargue, you can see the pitos, right? Isn't that true, Bradley? You grew up seeing those pitos, knowing that even Amerindians saw the pitos as deities, as gods, that those are the most recognizable symbols of the Caribbean in the entire world. That is the most modern Jamaica, Blue Mountains, more than anywhere else, right? The pitos are the #1 symbol of the Caribbean. And you know that. You know what the pitos means to us in terms of our flag, our coat of arms, everything about us. Right? The pitos, how we brand, what we do, everything about us. And yet somehow, when you allowed Herod Stanislaus, Guy Joseph, and all of those having secret meetings with these Canadians, overriding the DCA's recommendation with your cabal cabinet and Clem Bob and all the rest, y'all, the best defense that you could come with regards to what is going down at Gopito was that, you know, it's giving some people some jobs.
Talk of a development on the lands at Ursivoyne and Choiseul have been worrying for conservationist groups in St. Lucia. The land sits at the base of Gopito within the Pito Management Area, PMA, which is a designated restrictive area, part of St. Lucia's World Heritage Site. Considering the ensuing controversy when it was revealed that DCA approval may have been granted to a developer to pursue work, I spoke to a parliamentary representative for the area. Bradley Felix confirmed that he is aware that there is a private development slated for the area.
I think one of the misconceptions is when people hear a no-build zone, you're under the impression that there should be absolutely no construction. There can be some construction, but within certain parameters. So for example, the size of what you're doing there, the height of what you're doing there, how much intrusion are you into maybe the pitons or the riverbed or the sea. There are various restrictions, and I think DCA is on top of that. What I'm happy about is that in the community, it is creating the sort of much needed employment activity. But we need to also ensure that it is not, at the expense of our patrimony.
According to the UNESCO World Heritage page for the area, despite the comprehensive legal and management framework, several threats require permanent attention. Both in the short and longer term, the increasingly strong pressure to construct hotels and residential buildings is the single most important threat to the integrity of the small property. It seems that for these reasons, various environmental conservation bodies have taken issue with the possible development.
Rest assured, Mr. Speaker, we will be forgiven. I thank you.
Because of breaches that occurred in terms of allowing people to build in the no-build zones in the past, we nearly lost our World Heritage Site status, which brings which brings measurable, tangible benefits to our tourism product in terms of our branding, in terms of whether it's taxis, whether it's visiting, whether it's touring. Just like Stonehenge brings up to 10 million pounds, a year in added revenue to the UK economy. Right? We haven't even done a proper economic impact assessment of what World Heritage Site status gets us. Jimmy Fletcher had to go to rescue on behalf of the Kenny Anthony administration our World Heritage Site status, and they actually gave us a study called a LAC study, Limits of Acceptable Change study, which recommended what could be done and what should not be done to compromise our World Heritage Site status. And right where everything is being built down there at Anse-les-Voynes, at the bottom of Gopitor, at the base of Gopitor, we are only supposed to have minor signage, and if you wanted changing rooms for beach access and beach beach cabanas, if you want to put it that, made naturally to blend into the environment, and that was what was there to access the Gopitor Trail, which is part of the Soufrière Foundation and the economy of Soufrière's, if you want to call it local GDP, if you want to call it that. Now, that said, people marched.
While the construction of a private dwelling at the base of Gopitor continues to make headlines, several questions linger about the ongoing development, particularly as it relates to the exact scope and nature of the construction. On Sunday, some members of the local press accompanied a group of individuals who intended to get a first-hand view of what exactly is going on near the island's World Heritage Site. The journey by boat was intended to allow individuals to determine for themselves what impact, if any, the construction has had on the landscape and aesthetics of Gopitor.
I was invited to come out here, I think primarily because I have spoken out regarding the nature of this development which is occurring within the Pitor Management Area World Heritage Site. And that has of course been something we've had proudly since the year 2004. And clearly I think there is cause for concern because of the type of development which is happening within an area which is supposed to be effectively a no-build zone.
During the course of the visit, the press also seized the opportunity to speak to one of the founders of the island's newest political parties, who was in the vicinity when we arrived.
I come every once in a while, and I am mortified, taken aback by first of all, the access to the beach, one small footpath, and then the change right by the Pitor, by the Pitor's right there. It is just astounding. That should never have been allowed to proceed.
No, I'm not taking side. I'm taking your side.
Because the man is private duty.
The police making all the citizens of the country to hate them because they ain't right.
You don't trespass on the man's private property. But so where is it? Where are we now?
Exactly.
So who has determined that that is private and that is not private?
Well, who has determined that?
Who has determined that that is private and that is not private?
Who has determined that?
Yeah, because that's true. That's Queen's Chain. I don't understand. I don't understand what you're telling us here right now.
What I'm saying,
the Queen's Chain goes right up. The Queen's Chain goes right up to the edge of that property.
then I'll take you to
It goes right up to the edge of that property.
185 feet.
Have you measured it?
Okay.
I did about it. But right now,
185 feet.
I'll be on Queen's Chain.
You are now standing on private property. Who authorized you to be there?
I have authority.
Really?
Yes.
From who? From Daisy? From Daisy?
Because the
I cannot prevent you from walking the Queen's Chain.
That's a Queen's Chain here.
His private property is higher up there. I'm just telling you that now.
That's exactly my approach. People pushing confiance. I put in resistance. Do you have place to arrest 300 people? Simple as that.
Not even that. Not even that. If the man owned the property here, and the second of my property, I have no problem.
Now let's go.
This property is not his.
Then let us go. Then let us go. Yeah, go defend private property, respect the state property, the civilians will trade. Let us go.
It's really unbelievable the way the guys have diverted the Gopito Trail. They have diverted everything to facilitate St. Lucians not even going near the site. This land here does not belong to the Canadian guy, and therefore that potential or alleged barrier or whatever they have there serves no purpose in terms of assertion of ownership. That is not his land, and all they have done there is to do things to preclude members of the public.
So what does it mean when are these members of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force here?
Well, he's a police officer, but obviously he's on private duty. He's on private duty because I don't understand. He's on private duty because I don't understand why Shasta takes state resources to have a policeman to take taxpayers' money to have a police officer to guard private property. That is unheard of. That is totally unprecedented. And then the question is now, acting in a private capacity, where does he draw the line? Who knows? He's saying the property belongs to the man. Show me the proof. You cannot block the
That's why I said,
that's right. Simple as that. Things are going to get right?
Several members of the group were determined to see the controversial development and to obtain photos of the immediate area. However, upon approaching the property, the group was denied entry by individuals securing the area.
Take that picture for me. I say you're mad. You're pushing me. Don't push me. A leak bottom fella in uniform. Let us go. I don't have a problem with that. You see trespass? The same way I don't want people to first thing we tell ask that. Where the boundaries? I have pictures of it. And I say I'm not entering beyond that point.
Let me ask you a question.
You understand?
Watch me. When something is in dispute, what's the best way to deal with it?
When it's not in dispute. Anyway, you must identify yourself. You're trying to prevent somebody from doing something. Who are you working for? What are you doing here? Right? You're a police officer. What are you doing here? That's what we're asking.
You're asking me that question. As a former officer.
Yes, what are you doing here?
Wow.
What are you doing here?
It's amazing how we forget where we come from.
No. Look, you can't tell me about policing. You cannot tell me about policing. I'm asking you, what are you doing here? Right? Don't tell me about forget. You cannot tell me about policing. Okay? And I'm asking you, what are you doing here? Right? And if you can tell me what your legitimacy is, I'm willing to comply.
No, you're going to do whatever you're choosing.
No, if you tell us what legitimacy you have.
Anybody, you can do whatever you're choosing.
No. Right? I am willing to work with you now. But what is your legitimacy here?
If you, as an ex-police officer, asking me these kind of questions.
No, you're telling me you're here?
You're an ex-police officer.
You are here?
You are my commanding officer.
Indeed,
you are the one
indeed. So you cannot tell me about policing?
No.
You cannot tell me about policing.
That's not the same police
so
officer you to know.
You.
All right.
What has changed from when he was there and what obtains now?
Why are you asking me these questions, ma'am?
Are you here on the orders of the RSLPN or in a private?
Are you here in a private?
I'm not in a spat. Do what you all have to do.
What is your legitimacy here?
I have no legitimacy here, sir.
Well, if you have no legitimacy, you can't stop us.
Go and do whatever you choose to.
Right? You either have legitimacy.
Go ahead.
If you have legitimacy.
When you're playing the news, make sure you're that on it. Go ahead.
If you have legitimacy,
go ahead.
Then we will stop. If you do not have legitimacy, you cannot stop us.
All right, monsieur.
Go ahead.
Sons and daughters of St. Lucia, love the land that gave us birth, land of beaches, hills and valleys, fairest side of all the earth. Wheresoever you belong. Love, oh, love, our island, oh. On the times when nations battle for this hell and other west. Gone the days when strife and discord leave the children spoiled and dead. Dawns and last a brighter day stretches out a new way.
So that happened. That happened. And since then, there's been beefed up security as we went back there. We've had numerous challenges, although we were met with better accommodation this last time that we went last week. But folks, I want you to think about this. Gopito now has 3 roads carved into it, the hillside carved out behind the house, security that will not let you up the hill on the traditional access points to go up to Gopito, a new road cut in the back, a series of buildings at the bottom of it, and we do not even know what the other phases will hold. That said, they tried to blame it on Kenny Anthony because that's the typical tactic. Whenever this UWP does anything, they just blame Kenny. And Kenny was a bit pissed off at first because he thought the Labour Party should have had a full-throated defense of him one time, and I agree with him on that. But the fact of the matter is he did take time to explain that as a Prime Minister, even as a Prime Minister, you are governed by certain laws. If somebody wants to buy land in St. Lucia, every St. Lucian has the right to own land, and they also have the right to sell land. That even if the land is in the Peter management area, there are 2 phrases that come into law. Buyer beware, in other words, know what you're buying, and know the terms and conditions. So in selling the land, which Kenny Anthony could allow the St. Lucian guy, who they say was Kenny's cousin, no, it's not about that. The fact is the guy had the right to sell the land. But the person purchasing it also needed to know that there would be restrictions as to what they could do. For example, folks, you cannot go and open up a chicken van. You cannot put a chicken van in Cap Estates. You cannot put a nuclear power plant, all right, just anywhere in a society. There are rules governing things. You remember the Avis gas station when the roundabout and the median divided highway was put, they had to close it because the gas station could not be located there. That's what happens with anywhere. If you're building near the airport, you can only build your buildings to a certain height and from a certain distance from the airport. All of these things come into play. So that was it. But they wanted to blame Kenny Anthony for what they knew that they did, because all Kenny Anthony did was do what was within his powers as Prime Minister, and the referral agencies, the government's checks and balances, were supposed to come through as they did and say, hey, you can own this land, but if you want to build this, that, and the other, no, you can't do that. With this whole thing with the Peter management area and the development on Gopito, the assertion is that the correspondence between yourself as Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, and Thaddeus Antoine representing the Canadian family that wanted to build there, the assertion is that basically you were the one that set the ball rolling, or you endorsed them building on the property based on the correspondence. It's not how I read it, but at the end of the day, it's about the spin. So the question is, how do you feel about the whole thing?
The United Workers' Party has been in office now for 4.5 years. This is their final year. And you know what? Every single time that they get into trouble, they land in some embarrassment or the other, they look for a scapegoat. And of course, on this occasion, they have decided that I should be their scapegoat. I will not accept this. I will not tolerate it. And I will not sit down and allow it to happen. I read the statement by Harold Stanislaus, and I couldn't help but come to the conclusion that he has joined the pack in propagating lies and in propagating deceit. Conveniently, of course, he's never told or has not told the whole story in his statement, but I'll come to that in a few minutes. But you know what he does? He has decided at the very end of his statement to publish a statement which I made in a letter to the attorney representing the parties in the transaction involving the lands at Ansivoin. Now you'll notice that my letter was very carefully worded, and there was a reason for this, Chris. The fact of the matter is, part of the land that was sold was not in the PMA. Part was in the PMA. And recognizing that part was in the PMA, I worded the letter very carefully to say, quote, subject to the resolution of all outstanding issues regarding the status of that part of the property which falls within the World Heritage Site. So there was no question that the administration was aware that part of the land fell in the PMA, but in any event, there were issues there to be resolved before any construction could take place.
So the assertion is that you should have not given him approved developer status because of that.
Let us be very clear of what approved developer status is. Approved developer status is not approved status to construct a property or put on buildings on a site. No Prime Minister on his own has such authority. Approved developer status under the Special Development Areas Act, and incidentally, Soufrière was always designated as a special development area. That simply meant by its inclusion that approved developer status was granted for the purpose of receiving the concessions under the Act. Incidentally, the concession on stamp duty and, of course, vendor's tax was provided for the benefit of the St. Lucian family, who, of course, had decided that they would sell the land to the Canadian investor. So there's not a question that it was the investor who was getting the benefit of the concessions. Rather, it was a St. Lucian family. And we have to bear in mind that St. Lucians are entitled to own and dispose of their property. But the fact of the matter is that the letter was very carefully worded. It meant that the concessions were only applicable if there were resolution, or if there was a resolution of the issue of constructing close to the PMA, near the PMA, or even within the area within the PMA permitted by the various reports for some kind of construction activity. There was no question of that, about that. But what is interesting, Christopher, is this. Herod Stanislaus chooses in his statement only to cite specific events in the course of this issue. He never makes mention, for example, that in 2018, a residential application by the developer was in fact rejected by the DCA. And of course, the list of approvals is available by the Office of the Planning Department for Public Scrutiny. That denial of the application was in fact crossed over by the chairman of the DCA, marked approved. And what is interesting, of course, is that he makes absolutely no mention of the events from 2019 onwards, when various applications were presented to the DCA by the developer. To the credit of the DCA, they rejected some of these applications, and of course our good friend Herod Stanislaus refuses to explain why is it that the application had to be sent to the cabinet for the cabinet to give approval for the development to take place. Now you are telling me that that is a pious government, a government that of course acted in accordance with strict principles. That's what you want to tell me? Against that kind of background, against that kind of history? They need to explain, for example, whether in respect of the first approval for the residential building, that in fact the PMAC, that is a committee that looks over and protects the PMA, was given the opportunity to comment on that first development. They need to explain all of those things. But I want to just go one step further, Christopher, and add. If this government was pious, as it claims, as I said, if it was that sacrosanct, if it cared for the patrimony of St. Lucia as it said that it was, and mind you, they're accusing me, because I put in language in the approval of concessions, warning that in truth and in fact, you had to resolve all those issues that impacted on the PMA before anything could proceed. In other words, setting the stage for others to follow, to bear in mind that these are the challenges that have to be met. If they were that sacrosanct and that pious, why didn't they acquire the property in the interests of the people of St. Lucia? Even when they were going through the process of approvals for the property, they could have said, all right, we'll do the right thing. We made a mistake with Cabot. We caused enough problems with Cabot. Let's acquire the property. And, of course, and do something. Perhaps St. Lucians will feel relieved that at last we have done something in the interest of preserving the environment and the patrimony. That was available for them to do. There's nothing to prevent them from acquiring the property. So all this sanctimonious behavior, in my own personal view, is unjustified, misplaced, and is not really in accordance with the circumstances that prevail. I think what we need to do now is to get into the history of this matter, particularly the events in 2019, which led Cabinet to make the decision that the development must go on. These are the crucial events.
So they tried to do the whole blame Kenny. You heard people like Minervas Ward and the Bofest man and others, and they just do the same thing, blame Kenny. But the fact of the matter is, the only thing Kenny Anthony did was not overstep his bounds, much like what Shasney does. He didn't do that because the DCA is supposed to be the one to give approval for anything that's going on there according to the limits for acceptable change in the Petor management area. And they rejected all of the Canadian developers' plans. They rejected them. But then the government, the cabinet, and of course the henchman, Mr. Clembob, overrode all that.
Questions remain unanswered in the ongoing saga involving the development at the foot of Gopitor. News Force reached out to Chairman of the DCA, Mr. Clembob, but he was reluctant to provide answers. The public has been clamoring for clarity on the structure at the foot of Gopitor. News Force approached DCA Chairman Clembob, who was reportedly attending a meeting on the Queen's Chain on Tuesday, for answers. News Force was hoping to find out why the DCA granted approval to the project when the plans for the structure, according to the St. Lucia National Trust, were not reportedly submitted to the Petor Management Area Advisory Committee for review. He had this to say. When the PMAC never saw the plans.
Well, if that's what PMAC tell you, go to PMAC.
But so what's happening here? Have we discussed it? Are we going to see some kind of resolution in this? In this thing, it's now a lot of solutions are concerned. What can you tell us?
Well, that's up to them.
The DCA chair advised that News Force seek answers from the head of Crown Lands, who in turn referred the news team to the permanent secretary in the Department of Physical Planning. News Force also sought independent verification on the authenticity of a letter in wide circulation. The document making the rounds in the public domain makes reference to the Cabinet of Ministers instructing the DCA chairman to inform the applicant to apply to the Development Control Authority for the construction of the single-family private dwelling. We asked Bob whether this was common practice and sought to ascertain whether the document was authentic.
If you saw the document or you saw signature, I didn't see it. I don't know about that.
So you say this is fake? And should we be concerned because if you have a document with your name?
Just make sure you know what you're writing, that's all.
89% of the public has called for a cease and desist of the construction. As the DCA president, chairman, are you going to look into that?
No comments. No comments there.
Nonetheless, News Force remained persistent on the matter that has generated public debate and garnered heavy scrutiny. However, our efforts to gain further insight drew the ire of DCA chairman.
Construction's continuing. Is it going through, sir?
What part of no comments you don't understand? Want me to say it in patois?
For so they can understand.
So you're calling them ignorant now or illiterate?
Go ahead, let them know, because they want to know. This is in their community.
This is harassment. Why are you all harassing me like that?
We just have questions that need answers. So we're asking you, as the chairman of the Development Control Authority, what can the people of St. Lucia know about this single family dwelling that was granted approval under your watch?
Application in question for that building, which is currently going up on the Peters, that was approved. That went to what is known as the as a subcommittee of the Development Control Authority, because you know how it was treated? It wasn't treated as if it was an application within the PMA. Apparently, it was treated as if it was a single-family residential unit, and that tends to get a sort of a fast track, and the whole board does not generally meet on it. But apparently what occurs with that application 1026 of 18, and what, just go to screen now, this is an image, right, of the register of the various applications. As they are approved or whatever happens to them, that's how they're recorded. So at the bottom, right, you can see, and it says small development applications dated November 23rd, 2018, page 10 of 16. And so this is a listing of all applications and what has occurred, the type of the registration number, the date of the submission, the applicant's name, the type of the application, the block and parcel information, the square footage in question, who designed the property, and whether it was approved, what was done to it, and whether there were any remarks or concerns. And so right here, we have at the bottom, number 23, 1026 of 18, dated the 21st of November 2018. The applicant there is Mondesi Estates Limited, which in fact we know is the company that is registered and is owned by the gentleman in question. It's a residential application. We know the block and parcel number is correct. It says 0025B, number 4, Ansley Voyne. There's a square footage, 325 square meters, which is in fact, you just multiply by 10 and then add again, it's actually multiplied by 11 to get the square footage. So in other words, here you have a structure of nearly 3,300 square feet, over 3,300 square feet of structure. And you have the designer's name right there. And it says, as you can see where it says actually rejected. It says rejected, which is typed there. And then what you now have is that it is crossed off, and you see a signature. And I can only ask Mr. Clem Bob if that is his signature as the chairman of the Development Control Authority. And it says approved. So, and then of course on the last part we see the remarks, which it says reference to letter dated January the 26, 2018, which states the decision of rejection of ARN, and it goes on to the other page, 182 of 2017, which is the one we showed you earlier on, by Board of the Development Control Authority, DCA, at meeting dated April 21st, 2017, was based on the limits of acceptable change LAC study document received by the Physical Planning Section on March 13th, 2014, which stated, quote, no development is permitted in Policy Area 1 with exception of works to improve existing trails on Gopito, including minor signage and interpretation, end of quote. So what you have here is, again, an application which was considered by the Development Control Authority, the staff. As a second application, it was vetted. The recommendation was the exact same recommendation for rejection.
Now, you hear it? The Chasney administration literally overrode the DCA. Clem Bob was the head of the DCA, along with his letter, which shows you that the Cabinet of Ministers gave him the instruction to give them the instruction and override, and told the developers to go ahead and build on Gopito, even though it was originally rejected by the Development Control Authority staff, and Clem Bob overrode the rejection to approve what the DCA had rejected. We know about the secret meeting that occurred when the wife of the Canadian billionaire, the Rossi family that owns Dollarama in Canada, she came down, stayed at Ladera and met with Guy Joseph, Herod Stanislaus. Bradley was not there, but Bradley's part of it. Herod Stanislaus and Guy Joseph and a couple of others had their secret meeting, and this is what came out as a result. And Herod Stanislaus, raised in Soufrière, a taxi driver by profession before, that would take hundreds and thousands like others to this World Heritage Site, willfully put our World Heritage Site in danger. And they didn't tell anybody. Work was even going on, even during COVID, construction has been going on. And it was a hugely well-kept secret, because at the end of the day, our number one, the soul of St. Lucia, right, the Twin Peaks, have been bastardized by a UWP money grubber set of reprobates that made a secret deal to override what we knew would not fall within the limits of acceptable change, and the DCA rejected. So then they came with another excuse. Oh, there used to be a house there donkey years ago in the plantation days. Well, take a look at that.
So then now in 2019, they sent a revision. There was quite a lot of negotiating, and so finally it was discovered that on that same land there was an existing building of 3,500 square feet. So the developer says, well, look here, there was already a building, there's a precedent, I would like to have put a building there. And that building will be in the same footprint as the old building, and I'm no longer going to build a multifamily, I'm going to build a single family dwelling. Okay. This was found to be acceptable, and especially there were a number of things they had to do to satisfy that the buildings couldn't be seen from the sea, that no part of the building went ahead of the tree canopy, etc., and stuff like that. And so the approval was given on that basis.
Because there's a lot of storytelling that is being put forward by the Minister for Physical Development and as well as Mr. Clem Bob, the chairman of the Development Control Authority. They're making it seem as if, well, they're the ones in the know. And they're the ones who know how the system works. Well, I used to be on the board of the Development Control Authority with Mr. Clem Bob. So I know very well how he operates. And I do hope that he remembers that. So I do hope that they also will be honest with what is going on, because they have not been honest with what is going on down there at the Peters. They have gotten all sorts of stories about how there was a house there of 3,500 square feet. Absolutely untrue. There was never a house of 3,500 square feet on the property. There was a small hut of about maybe 700 square feet or thereabouts, but no more than that. And so when you hear these stories, you have to wonder. And the thing about it is that there's proof about these matters, Just go to screen for a moment, please. This is a graphic which you may have heard. It's actually a photograph, I should say, which shows the development in question, right? Down at Aslivoin at the Peter. The new villa, you can see it here, is a large sort of L-shaped structure, right? You're seeing three buildings there. You're seeing an L-shaped structure with a sort of a reddish roof. You're seeing another one below it. That's the original house. The original house on the property is that structure, and it's still there. The building above it. And then you see a little shed, which is probably like a work shed on the right-hand side. But to say that that original house and the new structure is being built in the footprint of the original house, that's what we're being told, by Mr. Bob. It's not true. Because we can still see the original house. So it's very, very clear that what is being constructed there, right, that 3,500 square foot house is not in the footprint of the original house. And it's a massive structure in comparison to the original house. So certainly
I don't know how that could ever be used as a justification for approval of that structure.
So you know what they did? Immediately after we came out with that information, they summarily destroyed the house, the little house of 500 odd square feet. And that house was of historical significance in and of itself. But it also was demarcating the rationale, as you see, for building the L-shaped structure that they have now, and more that's been added, and that we can no longer have access to or around. Now, folks, I went down there, and every time I go there, they ring the alarms, they call the police, everything, and I'm supposed to be the born St. Lucian, and this is supposed to be my heritage. Even if I walk on the places where they say I can walk, I'm followed by security guards and everything else, threatened by many of the workers there, the Herodites, the house slaves that are there. And I look at it, and I was approached by a Canadian gentleman, Mr. Harris, I came to find out, who I had heard about from before, who asked me if I needed any information. I found it curious, and at the time I wasn't willing to entertain, because I'll be honest with you, I felt insulted that I, as a St. Lucian, could be approached by a Canadian about a place that I'm supposed to have access to. But in the interest of St. Lucians, I turned around and I went back, and he gave me an interview. But I must say, this is my last show, so I can take the plug for it. He said that he did not want to do the interview, but I'm playing it anyway, because at the end of the day, it's my freaking country, so I'll get my blame for it. And what he said, for the most part, a lot of it does check out, and I know it's supposed to give you soulagement as to what's going on there. But much like when Chasney speaks, you get the gish gallop, and then you take a step back and you think. So folks, let's listen to Mr. Harris explain and try to allay my concerns with regard to what I saw in my last visit to Gopito about, what, 5 days ago? I wanted to know if we could interview you.
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
You said you knew everything about the development.
Yeah, well, I know about technically, but there are a couple of things that I'm still trying to understand.
Sure.
Okay. This is your property. I understand all of what is going on.
My client's property, yes.
Your client's property?
Yes.
So, but you're in charge of the overall construction, so?
Yes.
With regard to the buildings,
yes.
As far as I was told, right, by the lawyers representing the family, I was told that all of this would be blending in aesthetically in terms of the color scheme, much like this in terms of earth tones. Is there a rationalization for this in terms of that?
Yeah, that statement, I don't know where you got that from.
Okay,
because this is always intended to look. The client loves driving through Anse-Lorraine and the colours. So she wanted to replicate the colours as a village in Anse-Lorraine.
Okay.
That's as simple as that.
Okay.
Because it's under the tree cover, we moved 2 trees to do this. That's all, and the rest of it is, and it's all, you can see the man's replanting around it. So the idea is it all grows back, and this is it.
Okay. The river training in terms of changing the course of the river, is that environmentally, has that been approved in terms of?
We haven't changed the course of the river.
Well, I mean, I've seen it's been diverted from its natural course.
Have we diverted the river? No. We haven't diverted the river.
So the literal left turn in one part, and there's a part where it was blocked off higher up, none of that happened?
We haven't, I don't understand where we haven't changed the route of the river at all.
No.
No.
I saw in the earlier and also now that it's taking a different course in some parts.
No, and that could be from heavy rain or boulders moving, but not us.
Okay.
What we did do while we built the bridge was obviously guide the water through one side while we built one side, then move the water to the other side, and then once the bridge was finished, we let the water go.
Okay. The other thing, we still have beach access down the bottom? Okay. And with this, I've noticed this huge wall and construction that I saw you at a while ago.
Yes.
To my mind, there was nothing in the plans because the great house or whatever was supposed to be built wasn't approved according to the DCA.
No, there's no approval yet for the great house, no.
So then that wall...
That's been there since the 1700s. That's the old water wheel.
Yeah, but it's being built.
No, it's being refurbished, restored. That was the existing wall, and cracks and holes in it have been made good.
Right.
So it's back to its working order.
But I've seen the additional. I just saw some poles, electrical poles, and so on.
They're for supporting the water chute. Okay. So the water goes from the river into the aqueduct, across a wooden chute, and drives the water wheel.
Okay, but I mean, in the original, in terms of what I saw of the plans that were approved, I didn't know that was, or that did not show or was featured in terms of the plans.
No, this is a restoration project which has went through with National Trust, with Historical Society. We've actually used National Trust materials.
So the National Trust approves the restoration of these?
Well, they gave us the materials to do it, and they recommended the consultant that we brought in to actually supervise it.
Okay. And last but not least, will the Gopito Nature Trail still be accessible?
The client has already given a written undertaking and agreement with the Sue Fair Foundation.
So we will get, is it going to be an alternate access point? Because when I have come here before, I've been stopped at where, like, it's almost like when you're on the left side, they're telling you to be on the right side.
Yeah, that was for construction and safety of pedestrians. That fence for construction has been removed. The hut that you saw, the green hut,
yes,
that's actually opposite the entrance to the Sue Fair Foundation Trail.
Right.
That's it.
So in future, because we won't get access to this area here, will we?
Well, this is government land here, this road.
Right, this road.
This leads to the public right-of-way across the river.
Right.
And over to the beach, yes.
So the right-of-way across the river will remain the right-of-way to access the trail?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you feel comforted? Do you feel better about what's going on there? Well, I went to I contacted the National Trust, and a lot of what he says checks out. The National Trust is pleased that they have agreed to have the consultant for the restoration works of the aqueduct, the water wheel and water chute and so on. They are restoring according to the prescription from the National Trust. But the National Trust is not happy with the rest of the development. The houses in the bright colors and so on were not what was approved. It was supposed to be earth tones, brown, green, whatever blends in to the environment, and they definitely don't blend in. Now, folks, I played the interview. Like I said, it's my last show, and at the end of the day, the fact that he didn't want to be on camera actually spoke to me in the need to identify, because for me, I feel a personal affront to having to go to a Canadian to ask for permission so that I can know about what's happening to my heritage, my Pitos. Let's put it simply. Do you think any St. Lucian could go to Canada, start building on any of the Canadian landmarks, and not only get to do it, but then actually have Canadians come to beg for information or permission? Let's think about that orientation. Let's think about the fact that these people disclose nothing to us, and even now, it's only because I had my camera hidden and Trisha was there to help that we even have that information. So these people don't need to shit on us because they have a Canadian Prime Minister, so they are doing a Canadian project. Now it sounds nice, doesn't it, when you hear stuff like, oh, the lady, that's been Mrs. Rossi, when she's driven through Ancillary, she likes the houses in Ancillary, so they're building the houses like Ancillary. So we're supposed to be happy they didn't build them in a Canadian style? Or is it for them to write other chapters and lines in our history that now written into the history of St. Lucia and Gopito, we have a lady named Rossi, we have a business manager for their company named Mr. Robia, we now have Mr. Harris, now as part of St. Lucia's history, putting in houses that look like Ancillary. And what perspective is that? So a Canadian is now impacting our national heritage. If she said she wanted houses that look like Dennery, or if she wanted houses that look like Canada, or she wanted houses whatever, because she's the billionaire wife, so they can do what they want. And even if we say we wanted it to blend in and follow the limits for acceptable change, what's going to happen is the international observers for our World Heritage Site will simply come down from the United Nations, from all of the different agencies, World Heritage, and they'll just come and they say, okay, we're striking you off, like about 6 or 7 countries have been struck off. The part about the river training, well, folks, take a look at this, because this is not a new clip, but this is what I was telling him about. This is what I saw.
Sons and daughters of St. Lucia, love the land that gave us birth, land of beaches.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Yep. If that isn't river training, then I'm not an engineer, but if that isn't river training, I don't know what is. But I want you to note the orientation here, folks. They have the money, they have the power, we don't have the rights. A piece of government road or land has been dedicated to allow us to access. I don't know how much traffic they let going through what is essentially their living room of buildings. We now, just like how, you know, St. Lucian, Rick Wayne was the first person to say that, I always remember. You go onto the beach, and you know how St. Lucians can be loud, we playing our cricket, we're going out with our horses, we're doing all what we want on the beach. We're fetting, we're eating, drinking, we're having fun. As soon as tourists come by the beach, everybody gets muted because we've been told in a servile tourism colonial society mindset that we have to be quiet. Don't you think all of these things will inhibit us? Do you think that there's anything about what is going on there that represents us or people's interpretation of us? And something Jimmy Fletcher said, which is true. When it came to Chasney and our patrimony is our credit rating, you can rebuild your credit rating. But even as they restore the aqueduct, it will be a restoration. It will not be the original. Once patrimony is lost, it can be replicated, but it cannot be the authentic original. There is a hole, there is a gash in our Gopito right now. And I know that there are plans for other buildings. And if this government is re-elected, then there are, because you already heard Clem Bob and Champagne and Norbert talk about how they would like to reduce the size of the Pito management area. And Champagne himself said, which I've played for you before, that he thinks World Heritage Site status is overrated and doesn't care if we lose it. And the truth is, because the Labour Party under Kenny Anthony and Jimmy Fletcher were the ones that got World Heritage Site status, there are a lot of petty people in this United Workers' Party administration that don't like to honor that because it speaks to something that another government achieved. And you've seen the Chasney's pension for destroying what former administrations achieved, both UWP and Labour. But folks, let's think about the orientation. We are now having our most treasured landmark being built on, customized and changed around to what a Canadian billionaire, his wife and family interpret or want it to be. That should never be allowed to happen. And these are the reasons why we have to say, and we have to check ourselves now as to whether we want to continue to be the Helen of the West Indies, not perfect, but with all our scars and calmaçon and carbuncles, a hoped for work in progress, or whether we want to be the Pearl of the Caribbean, the new St. Lucia, which means that we, and what you see there of the old St. Lucia, can rightfully be destroyed.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land, glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard.
Did Guy Joseph offer you money to sign the airport deal?
In 2011, Guy Joseph did approach me, did give me the assurance that I would be taken care of. Soon after Guy Joseph had spoken to me, it worried me very much, because what I said to myself, would I ever have gone to Sir John and to say to Sir John, there is a company or the people are anticipating to start the airport, and the moment you do it, we'll take care of you. Well, if you take care of me, we will take care of you.
I'm a young man from the Marshall community, and I understand now Alan Shackley doesn't care about anybody, only the FFF, family, friends, foreigners.
And we have to admit as a nation that we have lowered the bar.
When SLP was there, they had a nice program. You know, the laptop for children. You know, Labour had a hat for people.
We have no more money.
But right now, Flabo forget about the people. They forget about us. St. Lucians, use your head this time. Put your X by the star. Because Labour will put you first.
The St. Lucia Labour Party, putting you first.
King would never want to be out without a job, because this is his only form of employment. So King would not leave the United Workers' Party and take a chance on trying to win as an independent without any labor support. In order for him to win mathematically, he has to have some labor votes, because a lot of UWP will not vote for him. I'm of Castries North.
You believe that UWP will not vote for him?
A lot of UWPs will not vote for him. They won't. A lot of people know King a lot better than what you're hearing about King.
What do you think of my premise that it was very unfair and cowardly to say I stayed in this corrupt element for 5 years because of you?
Well, that's the part of what you've said tonight that I especially liked, actually. Because how can you be with a group of men and you know whatever happens among them implicates you because of collective responsibility? So there's nothing that they've done that they've said the eyes have it on, whether you said no or not, that you're not a part of. You are implicated in it.
And that presumes you are not yourself doing your own.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
I said we are presuming that, quite apart from being complicit in what may have been around him, that he was also not on his own frolics.
Exactly.
I'm not saying he was. I'm not saying he was. I'm not saying he was, but I'm saying in the circumstances, I can't see you just sitting there, all this agonizing, a lot of corruption around you, and you're just sitting there.
But the agony is not having to sit. How could you agonize over whether you should stay or whether you should leave?
Because he says people elected him for 5 years and he didn't want to betray them.
I'm of Castries North, and I influenced a lot of people to vote for him. All of my family vote, and there's 2 households with about 30 up in Castries North, period. Okay? So when he says that he was working for us, no, you weren't working for me, because time and time again I called for you to do something about it. I called for you to join the no confidence vote. I called often. So no, you were not representing me. You have been representing me.
You talked to him about the no confidence vote?
Yeah, I thought he would have joined the no confidence vote.
Hey, you thought, or did you say you actually spoke to him about it?
No, I didn't speak to him.
You thought he would.
Radio.
You thought he would.
At radio and Facebook, I called for him to join.
But the
But no, Rick, let me tell you the reason why, though. I called for him to join. All of that. But how can you sit around the table, not do anything about the corruption that you have not told us what that corruption is, by the way? So we're just saying a conclusion corruption, but we haven't heard anything about any action that we can conclude was corrupt. So that in itself makes no sense. All right, so you sat around the table with these people all of this time. You took all of the benefits that you could get. You didn't think about us at that point. But now you're telling us to think about you and give you the opportunity to do exactly what you didn't do before, which is not be part of an organization, be an independent. You're not in cabinet. So it's just you taking care of the constituency, which is what you could have done had you said, I don't want to be around that corrupt bunch. So we're supposed to forgive you for not doing it and accept that you're going to do it now.
Can both the nefarious or the negative and the virtuous be true at the same time? Well, it can. And all you have to do is reverse the situation. If this had been done by a Labour Party stalwart, high-profile person that was winning their seat convincingly, and they left, running out the clock to run independent in a short space of time, I think Labour Party people would be pissed off. As to whether they'd be justified or not can be debated by all different sides. But you see, there's a certain bit of this that we're not talking about. That it's not that Labour Party people think that King is the greatest person in the world, nor is he the demon that they are trying to paint him out to be. He is both what we think positive and negatively about him on both sides. But you see, what really is sticking in their craw is that if he is serving his own interests, which is to win as an independent, he has made for himself a brilliant, politically calculated move. Now, the Labour Party people will tell you they prefer ethics and not winning by any means necessary. And the UWP is all about winning by any means necessary, even if what they win is shit government like what they got from Shasney, Guy, Sarah, and the rest of the cabal. But that said, for the people who, according to Rick Wayne, have a party born of deception, it's funny because a lot of people see it as comeuppance because, as a matter of fact, according to Rick Wayne and others, the UWP was created by that very same type of act.
Quickly, how did John Compton come about? How did the UWP come about? John Compton came about when he came back here from wherever as a lawyer and ran for elections with George Charles in the Labour Party, and John Compton won and got into politics in the House by the Labour Party. In due course, and I'm cutting this short, there was a war with George Charles and John Compton, who considered himself far more intellectually superior to George Charles. And the end of that story is John Compton got others to leave the Labour Party and other existing parties to join him, and they formed the United Workers' Party. That's the years putting it all together. Betrayal, deceit, pretense, all of that went into the formation of the United Workers' Party.
So, are the people in the United Workers' Party all on Sky FM, Champagne, and all of those people, and they're trying to paint Stephenson King as Judas and this, that, and the other? Is it convenient logic because at the end of the day, what was done to them is probably something Stephenson King knew of from being the only real connection between the original UWP stalwarts of Henry Giroudi and Compton and so on, Clendon, Mason and others, all the way through, and the Bousquet brothers, all the way through to the bastardized version that is Shasney and them? Well, I don't know. It's up to you. Because to me, what has happened is, Richard Frederick is exactly who he is for better and for worse. The Labour Party, Philip Pierre, Kenny Anthony are all who they were for better and for worse. Stephenson King is exactly who you think he is for better and for worse. And Shasney and the cabal, the kleptocracy is exactly what you see it to be, for better and sadly for much worse than any of the better.
I was then a member of the Labour Party. The person who really influenced me in one way to get into politics was Ali Lewis. He was then the president of, and people don't remember that, he was the first president and founding member of the St. Lucia Labour Party. Then I met with Carl Lecorbinier, who replaced Ali Lewis. Then there was George Charles. I worked with George Charles. The relationship with myself and George Charles, I couldn't tell anybody that it was too amicable. We worked together during the sugar areas, because he represented one sugar valley, I represented the other. But once the things started to change, the political scene started to change, other people started coming into politics. People like Morris Mason and not George Mallet was there before. I mean, we were not together. I'm speaking of then. I was then a member of the Labour Party. There was Morris Mason. There was Monroe's. George Charles thought that we were challenging him.
A generation divide.
Yes, and they called us with contempt intellectuals. Morris Mason, who was really, he was one of the best organizers we had. Morris Mason is the person really who created the present day Labour Party, gave it a structure, gave it a symbol, gave it a constitution, etc. All of that from Morris Mason. But while Morris Mason was working that way, he was being undermined. I mean, there was this jealousy creeping in. So we had to leave. I was then a member of the Labour Party.
Call it a deal, call it what you want. I mean, my father was a Labour Party supporter, and he and his brother moved across to give Sir John the majority he needed. Sir John was a Labour Party man, and he found that he disagreed with the leader of the party, and he felt, look, I'm going to leave and start my own party. So, I mean, this is not anything new. You know, Neville Snack is a government house now. Right. But famously was known, his catchphrase, in the same way that people say, how can you form a government with this, is a catchphrase. Well, Neville was the author of the catchphrase, the United Wreckers of the Poor. I mean, that was it. And he was a leader, he was a formidable politician, formidable speaker, and so on and so forth. But nonetheless, they're the deals are staring you. So don't tell anybody they can't make a deal, man. At the end of the day, let's let this political vacuum we have in this country mature. The Chazal-Saldivar seat is essentially a Labour seat. They're far more Labour. In fact, every seat in St. Lucia is essentially a Labour seat. You know. People are more Labour-oriented in this country than they are UWP-oriented. Although you'll see that Sir John was able to stay in power for as long as he did. But of course, remember what happened. I mean, Miku Denry was one seat. You're right. Then they cut it into 2 seats. Then they cut it into 4 seats. So Sir John always found himself having to do something in order to eke out a victory. And, you know, there were 9/8s and there were that sort of thing. So the Labour Party is a very powerful political machine. Right. And the individuals, including the leader of the Labour Party, I think this gentleman has his heart in the right place. That's what I feel. And certainly, I believe going forward, we've got to make sure that we bring people together. Whoever is in there, the praises to be had going forward are the praises that somebody is going to absorb on the basis of bringing our people together. Have people to recognize that we've got to have the priority of our people in terms of governance and the centrality of our communities. So our communities are central to our development as a nation. I think that's very, very important. And Steve moving now is a great thing. I think it's going to be seen when we look back on it years from now. We're going to see that it was something that transformed politics. And St. Lucian politics needs to be transformed.
I think pluralistic ignorance has got us caught in the 2 dimensions of politics. I welcome all the Green Party, just like I had the Staff Party. We're not 2-dimensional as people. So it's all about conformity. I disagree in the sense that maybe the St. Lucia used to be more they always used to say there are more Labour Party supporters than UWP. Whether it's death mortality rates, migration, whether it is whatever, just the new generations or whatever, I think there are more UWP supporters than Labour Party supporters right now, and I think they've been that way since probably the mid-90s to early 2000s. But that's anecdotal on my part. My point in all of this is to make sure people understand that what Stephenson King did there, while it can rightfully rub some people the wrong way and others think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, no doubt it creates intrigue. But you know what I think this is about? I think the real issue is that the UWP is an amoral party, right, led by corrupt leadership, and it has extolled win by any means necessary to the point where all the rules point to breaking whatever rules are there as long as they get to win. Whatever they have to do to win, as long as they win, it doesn't matter. The ends justify the means always. And the Labour Party, conventional almost to a fault, predictable. The ones that you look at supposed to be the good guys. So when you have people like, what's his name, that sucker, Danley LeBon's son, right? Not Danley LeBon is the suck-up in Soufre Foundation now, but his son, Ajani, trying to pretend to be objective, and he's saying, oh, if Richard Frederick and Stephenson King and them join the Labour Party, you know, they'll lose credibility. But yet, you and your family suck in the ass of the UWP for generations, and no matter who they bring inside of there, you'll have no problem with it. It's because both sides acknowledge a double standard. The Labour Party has to be perfect, and the UWP can be a reprobate squad. Nobody cares. They can give, like Shastney, all kinds of ephemeral promises and nothing for that. But the Labour Party has to do everything perfectly. Well, the Labour Party needs to stop being perfect or trying to be perfect. And the UWP needs to get some integrity back.
Independent candidate Stephenson King has received another high-profile endorsement, this time from fellow former Prime Minister and former cabinet colleague Michael Pilgrim. In a statement issued Wednesday, Pilgrim spoke of a call from then ailing Prime Minister Sir John Compton seeking his advice on the selection of a successor.
Let me hear your thoughts as to my successor. Without blinking, I said confidently, Stephenson King.
Pilgrim said Sir John, in his selection of a successor, was swayed by many of the notable qualities of Stephenson King.
Sir John chose an astute successor who is honest, hard-working, committed, and has a social conscience. He chose someone who is not arrogant, conceited, haughty, or revolting. Sir John wanted a successor who is sincere, genuine, and humble. One who is not selfish and greedy. One who is not corrupt, and above all, a person who understood the St. Lucian folklore and the sensitivity of the St. Lucian people. He wanted to choose a person who would be accepted by the St. Lucian public and who the people loved. This gentleman was no other than the Honorable Stephenson King.
Michael Pilgrim, the 1992 and 1997 United Workers' Party candidate for Grosile, along with other senior former UWP politicians, was recently dismissed as a relic of the political past by the UWP incumbent candidate for Grosile, Leonard Spider Montoute.
Those redundant politicians who are trying to bring themselves back into the limelight, I have no time for them. I look at the St. Lucia Labour Party platform here in Grosile. Tom Walcott, Clarence Rambali, Mikey Pilgrim, all derelicts of the past, of the dinosaur political era. They refuse to accept that the sun has set for them, and they're struggling to remain in the limelight.
Michael Pilgrim, who says he introduced Leonard Spider Montoute to then Prime Minister Dr. Vaughan Lewis, recounted his discussion with Sir John Compton about Leonard Montoute, who was one of the contenders to succeed Sir John.
I know Spider Montoute is your friend, and you introduced him to Vaughan Lewis as a suitable person to replace you as a candidate for the Grosile constituency. Do you know his profession or what he studied at university? I stammered and said, I believe he studied something to do with sports therapy. So John then said, he's a therapist, Mikey, and one would have thought or imagined that since his prime minister suffered a stroke, Spider would have offered to massage me or treat me using his special skills. He did none of that, as he was very busy with plans to replace me, as established by his remarks subsequent to arriving in St. Lucia after visiting me in the USA. These words were followed by a short period of silence. It was indeed food for thought, for in the deep recesses of my mind, I could recall the words of Spider Montoute. Compton is finished and is not coming back to St. Lucia alive. These remarks were very untimely and were the most unkindest words of all.
The three-way battle with Andre Pancho de Carres of the National Green Party, Leonard Spider Montoute, the incumbent of the United Workers' Party, and the main challenger, Kenson Bebe Kazebe of the St. Lucia Labour Party, is one that is being closely monitored for an early indication of the outcome of the general election.
If there's one thing that the UWP should be ashamed about, is their performance in health in this country. When you tell me a UWP government started the reconstruction of the St. Jude's Hospital, we lost after 2 years of commencement of the work. The Labour Party came in and without delay continued the work of the health of the hospital. We came back and we stopped the project, demolished buildings, found reasons why it must not continue until it lands in the laps of Fresh Start, and we spend millions and millions of dollars on this facility, and to date it cannot open. They must go to jail for that project.
I never said the country is broke.
I never committed anything. I never said it was under $10.
I never made such statement.
So I never spoke about single moms.
I never said altogether.
I never said the country is broke.
The country is broke.
But you remember you indicated that there's 1.5 billion or so committed to St. Lucia?
I never committed anything.
We have over $1.5 billion US of foreign direct investment that's committed to come to St. Lucia over the next 2 years.
For example, you said a while ago, Grenada's prices have reduced less than $10.
I never said it was under $10. I said it was under $11 at $10.
And why is Grenada just dropped to below $10?
He said transparency should not be onerous, that it takes precedence over development, unquote.
I never made such statement. I have not been to any OAS summit meetings.
Transparency should not be so onerous that it takes precedence over development.
So I never spoke about single moms.
Part of this system that we have of single mothers having multiple kids.
I never said altogether. Ban alcohol altogether.
This is UTV.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with The Revolution. Those locked in on Hits Radio 92.1 in North, 91.1 in the South, thank you for staying with us. Those locked in on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, Twitch, Twitter, on all of the mediums. Yes, of course, TikTok as well. Thank you very much. Like I said, this is as promised, so all sides, all who care and don't, this is the final episode. So we're going a bit long today because I have to make a couple of closing arguments. And then we'll take a couple of calls because, like I said, this is the last lap before elections. And I like to keep my word. Now, folks, whether you know it or not, as we speak, the United Workers' Party, the government and Shastney and so on that claim to care about the poor, that have not given any economic stimulus or relief Even with COVID and Shastny saying that there were people suffering as he saw going around the country, he said just a week and a half or so ago, that he saw people suffering before COVID, much less during COVID, has not given stimulus, and is now saying that if you re-elect them as a quid pro quo, then you will get some attempt at unemployment benefits or relief for the poor. And even as he has pushed many into poverty, unless you are part of the FFF, you cannot get through. But as we speak right now, SLASPA has allowed the clearance of $650,000 worth of UWP t-shirts, of UWP shoes, of UWP caps, of UWP masks, of UWP tracksuit pants and shirts, so that they will all be given out in a mass distribution this coming Sunday. Yes, folks, over $500,000 worth of UWP paraphernalia bought to vegle the people on the eve of an election. No food, no stimulus, but that. And why? Why is that? Because they can see that at very least their campaign is underwhelming.
Progress and development.
Spider, you mad, man. You mad in your head, man.
Thank you for the last 5 years. And I look forward to continue working with you.
Spider, you mad.
Pleasant good night.
How are you fellas who cannot labor? How are fire for you, Papa? How hurt you?
That's the relationship.
My G.
That's when something goes wrong.
Pop-up meeting. Pop-up meeting.
That's when you grieve about the grace.
Representing.
That's when you celebrate, I applaud with you. That's when you exchange your marital vows, I am there. When your children are born, I congratulate you. This is not representation from a distance. This is intimate representation. And that's why you are going to vote for your Auntie Gail on the 26th of July. And that's it.
You see, they say that Trump took the sideshow and made it the main event. And Shastny and the consultants, Cambridge Analytica, Mindbenders, and so on are doing the exact same thing. They cannot win on the substance because they have none. They cannot win on their performance because they let the people down. They ignored the people, marginalized the people, targeted and victimized the people, pitted one person against the other, and thankfully we realized the trick and the veglistics before it was too late. And now they are coming, not even at the 11th hour, at the 12th hour going to 12:30. They are coming now. $650,000 worth of tracksuits, of t-shirts, of shoes, and so on, caps, and other UWP paraphernalia, football jerseys, so that they can try a last-minute vegle, just like what Fade is doing, just like what Este is doing, trying to buy people's votes. But to the fishers and all the fishing economies and agriculture-based economies, they wouldn't give you $1,500 as a farmer. Ezekiel said that. But you sit up in Babonneau and vote for Ezekiel to stay in office because he's going to give you a football jersey or a pair of UWP shoes that was bought with your money that they stole? It's up to you. But as I close in my closing arguments, and I have another, 3 clips or so to play, I want to tell you the singular reason that is driving me as we speak. My number one issue, the thing that I am going to the polls to fight and combat against, and that is the promotion, the promulgation, the extolling, and the marketing of the house slave mentality.
Another word for Kenyonomics is plantocracy economics. Because it's only in the days of plantocracy that a landlord would impose taxes on the people who were working the lands and not care about the conditions of their work or their living conditions, but was more concerned about his own living standards. But when one sees where the history and the heritage of Dr. Anthony and that a massa mentality, and you can change your name, but you cannot change who you are.
There's something that we have to change within ourselves, and I think it comes back to our education system.
Everybody has been overwhelmingly surprised at the caliber of the young people in the South and how trainable everybody has become.
A robot and a computer could never take care of a horse. It's only people that can take care of horses. And I know of the love and the passion that the people in the South have. And I know how great they are going to be at taking care of horses. I am not coming here, United Workers Party is not coming here, T.R. King is not coming here to take away anything from Viewfort. He's looking to put his money in, give you his ideas, bring his contacts in order for us to have the pearl of the Caribbean. Say it with pride, the pearl of the Caribbean. That when people say I am from Viewfort, soon people will not know Viewfort. You are from the pearl of the Caribbean. Where you want to be from, a ghetto, or you want to be from the pearl of the Caribbean? Where do you want to be from?
I would really like to congratulate the government, the Prime Minister and his administration, in particular the Ministry of Health, for having that dialysis center open up. Because I had a friend of mine, a few years ago, the Victoria Hospital was going through some technical difficulties with the dialysis machines. And I had to give him a ride every now and then down to Viewfort and back. So I know this morning or yesterday, he was one of the happiest people in St. Lucia for the opening of that dialysis machine. I always want to say to the people that have the pleasure of driving around this country, you would notice that there's work going on all around this country. People are working. You know, what I would like to say here is the negativity that surrounds this country with some people. I want the St. Lucian public to open their eyes and think for themselves, observe for themselves what is happening. And like the Creole language say, there's more to come, and there's a big thing to come. I'd like to congratulate the Prime Minister of this country for making this country something.
Ação pai vrai quoi manière moi regretter moi vote by chasse c'est juste ça by ouais dans les moi même ne dollar poche moi dis moi so pain sec moi pour marier ma sa même gon juice ouais même by là.
There was two kinds of slaves. There was the house Negro and the field Negro. The house Negro, they lived in the house with master. They dressed pretty good. They ate good because they ate his food, what he left. They lived in the attic or the basement, but still they lived near their master. And they loved their master more than the master loved himself. They would give their life to save their master's house quicker than the master would. The house Negro, if the master said, we got a good house here, the house Negro said, yeah, we got a good house here. Whenever the master said we, he said we. That's how you can tell a house Negro. If the master's house caught on fire, the house Negro would fight harder to put the blaze out than the master would. If the master got sick, the house Negro would say, what's the matter, boss? We sick. We sick. He identified himself with his master more than his master identified with himself. And if you came to the house Negro and said, let's run away, let's escape, let's separate, that house Negro would look at you and say, man, you crazy. What you mean separate? Where is there a better house than this? Where can I wear better clothes than this? Where can I eat better food than this? That was that house Negro. In those days, he was called a house nigger. And that's what we call him today, because we still got some house niggers running around here. This modern house Negro, loves his master. He wants to live near him. He'll pay 3 times as much as the house is worth just to live near his master. And then brag about, I'm the only Negro out here. I'm the only one on my job. I'm the only one in this school. You're nothing but a house Negro. And if someone come to you right now and say, let's separate, you say the same thing that the house Negro said on the plantation.
Shastless party that day.
Oh, Shastless party.
My boss. Do I want to take my passport to go to England?
Okay, you're going to take your passport to go to England?
Yeah.
Okay. Damn, nigga, you kill it. You serious about that? So you're going to England?
Yeah. But Mr. Sassner waiting for me there already, son.
Oh, you waiting for you there already?
The man waiting for me, son. The man comes to how they give my passport, you go send a letter, you have to send a letter.
Okay.
Because then people do one thing, how you to put my name and my birth certificate all the time. I have my bursary, I traveling everywhere. As my passport resigned, your government and I have to pay $63 to put my name on the passport.
That's nonsense. You gotta call your boss.
And my birth certificate, $63.
Yeah, you gotta call your boss.
I tell him that.
You tell him that?
If I tell him that,
all right.
If I tell him that,
you got it. All right.
I don't think this election is about UWP versus Labour Party. UWP and Labour Party were just 2 different philosophical methodologies toward national progress. These guys have privatized and corporatized, liquidated and manipulated our country for their own personal gains and for that of those of their friends and their family and select foreigners who will keep their secrets and be in league with them as long as they continue to take our resources and dole them out to those same foreigners for a cut, a big cut. Folks, I've said it before. We have had, if you want to call it technically, a white prime minister. That is Kenny Anthony. But know the person by their conscience, by their value system. Kenny Anthony governed as a socialist progressive. The Proud program to me is his greatest achievement. The rationalization of lands for St. Lucians who through slavery and even when it was abolished could never get land ownership like the European plantocracy owners, the plantation owners whose rights were always honored whether we were 7 times British or French. The land claims of those people were always honored. Chasney has taken all of the best lands that we have and more and given it away, seeing no value in our patrimony, in our heritage, or even our most finite resource. The fact of the matter is, a house slave is somebody who will literally abandon his values, his or her values, what they have been socialized with and what has been inculcated in them, to pursue or to accept values that are alien to them or alien to them. What do I mean? How does a mayor like Peterson, his self-worship ass Francis, be raised in the CDC and yet be torturing vendors as he has done? Multiple Mother's Day massacres and other transgressions. How does Herman Gill Francis, a former police officer, top cop, second top cop, or whatever, deputy police commissioner, talk about how the politicians would use their power and exert their will over the police and then turn around and try to have customs, police officers and so on fired because they won't take his calls? Breaking the law, telling people, coming and encouraging people to come drunk driving, get free rum punch to be part of his motorcade. That's a house slave mentality. How does a black man like Champagne be calling people neg, noir, sit down with Josie, another black man, telling about people who like to have black children, right? And talk about how Chasney's face looks like a baby and all kinds of stuff like that. Folks, the neo-colonial experiment is on the verge of being sealed once and for all. And as much as it is a failure for us, it was never meant to succeed for us. We were the collateral damage of building a new St. Lucia, the bourgeois enclave that doesn't include us. A Chinese labor force imported investors, taking all of our lands to create, as Alva Baptiste rightly said, a desired bourgeois enclave. And if it fails, well, Chasney has always made a lifetime's habit of wasting and risking our money. If it succeeds, he gets the benefits, and if it fails, we pay the cost. And that's why I am going to vote, because I am choosing patriotism over colonialism.
In the words of our poet, Sir Derek Walcott,
I watched the doomed acres where yet another luxury hotel will be built with ordinary people fenced out.
He was very passionate about not turning all our beaches into hotels.
And he has written so eloquently about the desecration of this island, the abuse of the island.
The new makers of our history profit without guilt and are in fact prophets of a policy that will make this island a mall. The new makers of our history profit without guilt and are in fact prophets of a policy that will make this island a mall.
and I never understand sometimes the negative criticism towards tourism. So even right now, you know, we've invited tourists to come here in this difficult time to spend money, to keep people employed. And I see some people wanting to criticize the industry. And I scratched my head and I said, wow, so you've been to a shopping mall.
Right.
Okay, so St. Lucia's like a shopping mall. So you've been to a shopping mall.
Right.
Okay, so St. Lucia's like a shopping mall.
St. Lucians, you think either man or song mine?
He has rebuked those whom he says are discouraging the foreign investors through what he describes as anti-foreign rhetoric.
Is so anti-foreign investment in this country, whether it be Cabot, whether it be a person who bought land to build a house, Ojo Labs, DSH.
People all across the communities and constituencies of this country are being impacted negatively. In the absence of strong policy responses, the COVID-19 crisis could deepen disparities between communities, even in the St. Lucia. So better resource communities are going to do much better than the poor communities. And you see, Mr. Speaker, we might end up with a situation where we have a few rich people and the majority of people are poor, because the middle class, if they are in free fall, will disappear. And you know, Mr. Speaker, they take it lightly. Members opposite take everything lightly. That the warnings are of no consequence. We are about to open up the country. We are about to borrow for infrastructure to give people jobs to do. Those people who are their barber shops and had to close it because of COVID-19, are they going to be employed in those projects? The people with the hairdressing salon, are they going to be included in this? The people on the block, all of those people, are they going to be catered for? The point is, the people of this country require assistance. And they require that assistance urgently, or else by the end of 2020, thousands of families who existed above the poverty line will be below the poverty line. I can speak on behalf of my constituents that we are not leeches. The leeches are those who come to a poor country and want the country to spend over $3 million doing baptême cheval for them. Spend millions of dollars diverting roads. A leech will come here, like those who go in our NIC funds and take millions of dollars for some Cabot Link project.
Mr. Speaker,
these are the leeches.
Understanding a point of order. Mr. Speaker, I have allowed the member from Labrie to say that in previous sessions of the House, where he has used the word leech to describe investors in this country. I would like him to desist and desist from making those statements. He may not appreciate the investment is being made, but to use derogatory language to describe them, Mr. Speaker, of persons who have come to this country, invested their money, created jobs in this country, and are helping to promote this country every day. Mr. Speaker, I have a strong objection to him doing that.
I'm not going to. That's not the point of order.
Honourable member.
Mr. Speaker.
Let me just say something. I would say that investment is a very crucial part of our economic development, and I would ask you to be very careful how you refer to persons that partake or assist us in our economic development.
Mr. Speaker, two things. One, the member from Miku South will not instruct me in this house as to what I can say or what I cannot say. I am quite conversant with the procedures of this house, and I will take no directive from the member from Miku South. And secondly, anyone who comes here, we have to take millions of dollars to divert road for. This is a small and vulnerable economy. I have every right to express in the most profound way my displeasure and my dissatisfaction with what is happening. When the Majomel Road is in a deplorable condition, it needs to be repaired. $13 million is being spent for Tioaking to divert a road, and I must come here and I will not call Tioaking a leech.
Speaker, point of order.
That was about honourable member.
I'm not going to yield. You have no point of order. Yes.
Prime Minister Alan Shasney has appealed to St. Lucians to show some respect.
Tourism, we've shown that even in the midst of this pandemic, that we can have our borders open and we can get people to come here. And here we're an example of two people that followed the proper protocols to come to St. Lucia. And so there has to be a greater level of tolerance and respect to each other.
Let us deal with the reality. We have our worst fear. Someone has been affected, we believe, which started from somebody coming in through the back door. That we have to become more draconian in imposing the protocols we have. We will do it. All of us must be shaming anyone who does not adhere to the rules, because in essence what they're doing is they're threatening the economy of our country, but more importantly they're threatening the lives of people in this country. But what I see that's taking place, this level of terrorism that's taking place in this country, is to suggest that our government needs to be limited in what options it has. So the Labour Party lost its ability to determine that direction on June 6th.
If the public sector unions did not get the message during the border control debate, the Prime Minister is making himself clear once again.
Stop it. It is not your job to tell the government how to run government. You are a component of government. And so saying that you don't like this project or you don't like that project, that is for the electorate of this country to determine when the election comes. Economics has no conscience. That's what I keep saying to everybody. You know, colonialization had a conscience in that ultimately there was a person making the decision. Economics has no conscience. A massa mentality. So I keep saying to everybody, you know, colonialization had a conscience in that ultimately there was a person making the decision. Colonialization had a conscience.
When you look at the issue, I think my Prime Minister was attempting to allude to, if I understand what he was saying, is that there were people there, you know, there were people there, people, human beings who had a heart, who had a conscience.
It's true that I'm scared of what's happening in St. Lucia, my island. The hotels are going up rapidly. Tourism is booming, but we still don't have a museum. We still don't have a theater.
Derek had a passion for St. Lucia, for his country.
I watched the doomed acres where yet another luxury hotel will be built with ordinary people fenced out.
He was very passionate about not turning all our beaches into hotels.
And he has written so eloquently about the desecration of this island, the abuse of the island.
The new makers of our history profit without guilt and are in fact prophets of a policy that will make this island a mall.
So he is very, very strong against a kind of development that would make us lose our souls.
These new plantations by the sea, a slavery without chains.
One independence celebration morning, we will wake up, flags waving, I am Lucian, I am Lucia, and suddenly realize 238 square miles on the auction block, going once, going twice, going, sold to the cheapest foreign bidder online. Thank you very much.
That's what's on the ballot. These are the stark choices. Do not let them make you believe that this is your father's or your mother's United Workers' Party. If it were that, then people like Lady Janice, people like Stevenson King, people like Mikey Pilgrim, people like Stephen King, Dr. King, people like Adrian Auger and others would not be rallying behind Stevenson King. And they're not rallying behind Stevenson King because he's perfect. They're not rallying behind Richard Frederick because he's perfect. People are not rallying behind Emma Hippolyte or Philip J. Pierre or Kenny Anthony or Sean Edwards because they're perfect. They're rallying behind them because they are St. Lucians, and no matter what you say about them, they have proven that they care more about St. Lucia than Chasney ever will, and the rest of the cabinet who you used to think cared about St. Lucia, who are in league with him. Well, Guy Joseph only ever cared about the boulder on his shoulder called the need to have every freaking cent on the planet. That said, folks, and I want to send a special shout out to all of the election observers here. Please note all of the psychological tactics, vote buying attempts that contravene our Elections Act by people like Spider, Edmund Estefan, Fede, Chasney, you name it, Gail Regobert, all of them vote buying, giving cash, use of Cambridge Analytica techniques and tactics, going through your phone, sending you text messages to win trips to Barbados, win cell phones, win cash prizes, everything for quizzes that have bullshit misinformation. Straight outright vote buying, fuel vouchers to Mark Mirages as a UWP hack his gas station from Spider and others. Outright cash siphoned and stolen from the people, given back to them, the same people that they starved, true Willie Lynch style. I want to speak to the man who is over in charge at the US Embassy, the man who's in charge of the political desk at the US Embassy, who also is following what is happening here. And let him know that the Republican machine that Trump has, that contaminated your country with the cancer that it has in terms of the nasty politics that's here, it is being worked on right here. You have some shitty Bajan ads coming through Peter Wickhead and the rest of them, right? All of these nasty ads that they're coming with and all of the stuff, the propaganda that they're using, all of the misinformation and the vote buying. So Mr. Joe Tordella, I'm asking you to please make special note that we are telling you that you have Republican forces here, aided and abetted by Cambridge Analytica, Emma Data, the Mercer family, who are trying to mind bend the people of St. Lucia. And it is only few of us that are seeing it, but we are calling it out.
It's not in our interest, okay? And it's typical of who Alan is. I think I want people to understand who they have there as a prime minister. Yeah. Because what you're seeing, you know, and a lot of people, whether we like it or not, some people are hypnotized by color. That's a reality. We have to accept that. It's unfortunate, but it's a reality. So therefore, they will look at it, and all of this silly talk about Auntie Gail and Uncle Alan and all this sort of thing. These things are compromising our people. I hate it. I hate it. It's disgusting. anti-poll. You're a politician, Uncle Shas and all this foolishness. This is nonsense, man. It's the idea is to give people the impression that you're some kind of benefactor. You know, you do, hey, Uncle Shas, I need a little job, you know, Uncle Shas. As though you're close to them. These people don't have the time of day for you except when they need you and to use you to elevate themselves. That's what it is.
Jim Crow mentality.
I find it disgusting, and people need to get away from that foolishness. But of course you are. You're under. So Uncle Shas is coming to rescue you, and Auntie Gail, and all this kind of foolishness, and Uncle Spider. All of these people. So we need to realize what it is that's happening to us as a people, the transformative way that they're going.
And for those who want to raise the argument, Auntie Emma was a genuine nickname that came because Simple started it calling her Auntie Emma. Emma Hippolyte, having no children, has raised and helped to raise other children in her family, nieces and nephews. And that is where Auntie Emma came from. Genuine. The same way that whether it's Stevenson King or it's Bradley Felix, whether it was Tony Torrance, or whether it was Clendon Mason, whether it was the Bousquets, all of these people, Compton, Hunt, and everybody in between, they were grown, raised, and they played football, went to school, spent time, and worked in community groups like Rotary, football clubs, Lions, Kiwanis, you name it, different charity groups, constituency groups. So there was a genuine bond. Shasney's bond to steal money from the state and try to bribe you with it. And that's the bond that he's trying to foster. I am going to vote because I believe that we are not people motivated by money, or at least we weren't until this cancer came across the land. I believe that St. Lucians should not be aspiring to be workers, and that psychology that you've made everybody go into economic destitution with the excuse being COVID, and then using money to vegle them and tell them that they'll be a worker. St. Lucia does not need more workers. St. Lucia needs more owners. So I don't want to be any worker. I want to be an owner. St. Lucians, like Rufus Bousquet and others have said, are not owning enough, and all that's happening is that you and your family and Guy and his cabal, y'all are the ones that want to own everything. So that is why I'm going to the polls. I believe that St. Lucians should come first in their own country. If you want to treat me as a second-class citizen in the United States or in Trinidad or Barbados or Canada, so be it. I'll accept that, because that's not my country. But as a St. Lucian, I make no apologies, just like the leader of the opposition said, Philip J. Pierre, at the 2018 convention. I make no apologies for wanting St. Lucians to be put first in our own country. I make no apologies for wanting to see the end of all this fabulous, ephemeral bullshit that Shasney keeps pushing. I'm tired of y'all. I'm sick of Shasney. I am sick of Guy. And for the St. Lucia, you know what I want? I want us to go back to leading purpose-driven lives, to know what sports our children were playing, to know how much money we were making in developing our businesses, our education, our home, our quality of life. You know what I love, and I'm going to say it, you know what I love about St. Lucia that's fading? A fella I met in Barron's Drive about a month ago, one of Herod's hacks. The man cursed me on my mother. Boy, your mother can't. I'm saying it. You know what the truth was? I loved it. Not because I didn't have any respect for my mother, but because I fight for the freedom that allows him to continue to do that. And when I was leaving, I cursed him on his mother and we laughed, even though it started out acrimoniously. Trisha and we were driving from Viewfort about 2 or 3 days ago, and she was saying, you know something? I feel so blessed. I love being St. Lucian, and I do. And I actually feel sorry for other people who are not St. Lucian. And I say, nobody's perfect. But the fact of the matter is that that is what is on the ballot, and that is what is under threat. Now you have to go everywhere and be scared like the Chamber of Commerce or all the other associations. And that fear pervades the land so that people can't criticize Guy. Nobody can tell Shasney what they know to be the truth, even when they can see that he's lying. I don't want to live in a St. Lucia like that. I want to live in a St. Lucia where somebody can curse me and know that I cannot victimize him, because we have put the rules in place and we have the austerity and the moral rectitude and culture of fairness. None of that Lord giveth and Lord taketh away bullshit from assholes like Peterson Francis. I don't care about Simple, but I care about his civil rights, and I want mine. And I will pursue what happened to me on that day that I was arrested, not for me. so that it can never happen to another St. Lucian. And I am voting because I want to live in a St. Lucia where we have moved past, where we have shunned, where we have decimated, where we have destroyed the slave mentality, and we have become more.
So it's going to be a big help for the entire world, especially the Caribbean, where these things are going to be made available so that the vaccines can be, potent and that they can do what they're supposed to be doing. So I think that's wonderful news, despite the fact that they may have some ulterior motive, as Charlie is implying. Yeah,
I'm not implying anything. I haven't said so. But I'm saying we're dealing with... No, you see, Andre, we're dealing with human beings. And people will do anything to make billions of dollars.
I wish Andre... No, it's not. I wish Charlie would have that same skeptical approach to other things as well. He wouldn't limit it.
Like what? I'm not limited. When you're dealing with human beings. So let me tell you something. You see, in my life, for the few years God put me in this world, I've seen so much, reading about people telling, oh, I love you so much, darling, I'll never have nobody but you. No, but I'm just saying to you, I love you so much, darling. As soon as you board a plane, as soon as you board a plane, they know you're not there. Somebody else, they say the same thing too. So what are you talking about? You're dealing with human beings.
That's why he says he trusts no one.
I don't trust, I'm not even trusting myself. Because I say I will do something sometimes and I go back doing the same thing. Oh, I'll trust anybody in this world. Not a single human being.
Give us one that you go back and do.
No, but you're telling me. Let me tell you.
No. So I want to hear. What's this thing that you left and you came back?
Let me tell you.
Charlie, you just said something.
I'm asking you. Already in my life. Right. I've been part of it doing the same thing.
Right. So what was that? What was that, Charlie?
Life.
No, just give us one example.
I say to you. I mean, we have life. We have run life. Because you see people, you
talk for yourself.
Me, I say, that person will never do that. And
but maybe you raise your expectations too high, Charlie.
There are no expectations. You're dealing with human beings. People do.
So you have trustworthy.
I ain't trusting nobody.
Charlie,
if I know
Charlie, say it loud and clear. Do you trust the Prime Minister?
My friend, yes.
That's a nice one, Andre.
So far, I trust him. His word. You haven't gone back on his word. If you give me his word about anything, you have to keep it.
The man just ain't trust anybody, not even himself.
I've always told people, rural people especially, and what I would call the downtrodden, or the people who have the least opportunities. The guys at the 1% at the top, they don't need me to help them. If they need a lawyer, they're going to get one. They know where to get one, they'll pay for it. If they need a doctor, they'll fly to Martinique or Miami and get their medication and get taken care of. It is the little guy who is always struggling, and yet for some reason or another, these are the people who tend to be so infatuated with color and a little money that they tend to vote along those lines and then pay for it in a huge way going down the road. And I think it's important for us to recognize that we must understand the psychology of the people who are running this organization.
Il a toujours Soisey, c'est un de ses plus belles côtés en cette ici, c'est Soisey. Et nous n'y a monsieur qui a représenté Soisey, il y a une longue natte, tu connais lui? Il y a une longue natte. Comment non monsieur ça? Aïe 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 aïe, monsieur, bah il a belle Soisey. Bon, nous n'y sommes vieux nègres, et moi je crois vieux nègres. You need 17 constituencies ici. Zot ka voye 15 noms pour accommoder vienne Constitution King, vienne Comité Patrick. C'est moun qui ga vote by zot là. Zot ka forcer ce moun vote by des vienne.
20 minutes later.
But I want to tell Chozel Solibus tonight, it takes a white man to pick up St. Lucia from grounds.
And we in 2021 now. And we in 2021 now.
Alors moi ka fa ou sav ke ki, moi si moi vote bay un nom blanc passé bay Philippe Jepierre. Parce que c'est nom blanc qui ka mette manger en l'étape moi. Philippe Jepierre nom nou à 10 autres keki. Nom nou à 10 autres keki. 6 ans vote bay. Il pas qu'à ça mette mangeant les tabzot. Alors nom blanc dit moi comme ça. Il qu'à ça mette mangeant les tab moi. C'est pour ça moi si me vote bay en nom blanc, passer bay en nom noir. Alors moi ka penser keki. Zot ka comprendre ça moi ka dire. Moi dis comme ça, c'est nom blanc qui ka mette mangeant la table moi. Alors nèg noir pas ça mette mangeant la table moi si me vote by nom blanc.
They're intimidated by Alan because they realize Alan Chastanet is an international kind of person. Yeah. Wherever Alan Chastanet goes, he's known. He has the introduction by different governments, the way he carries himself, the way he speaks, and maybe even his little Kule YII. So why do you think Hile has been up front all the time and not Pip? The little Kule YII Hile has. He's aware of it. All of the supporters know. They don't have Kenny Anthony anymore. I don't think Kenny Anthony wants to come back there. And I don't think the people of Beaufort might even vote for him.
No, they won't.
If we get a good candidate down there.
They won't.
So you see the dilemma the Labour Party faces. They don't like Alan Chastanet. He's too white, his family is this and that and that. All sorts of criticism. And yet, there is jealousy of wanting to pick somebody who is just like Alan Chastanet. In all of those things that the Labour Party is speaking, they know very well what they're trying to do. And there's an unspoken word, and as Sir Michael said, I was in the bosom of the beast, so I know the beast. I know it.
And you're saying the beast has not changed over the years?
The beast is getting worse, but guess what? I have the antitoxin for the beast.
Okay.
I have the vaccine for the beast.
Yeah, the antidote.
Yeah, the antidote. But guess what? The beast knows that the people of St. Lucia prefer a little cooler YII. St. Lucians don't like people that are too black unless it's their own family. Sometimes the people who have children that are black is born, they cut it by their own child, you know.
We need to ensure that we have people who can engage with all races.
It takes a white man to pick up St. Lucia from grounds.
Moi si me vote by un homme blanc, passer by un homme noir.
I have every confidence in the Honorable Alan Chastanet as Prime Minister.
Moi si me vote by un homme blanc, passer by Philippe Jepierre.
I pledge my unconditional support.
The people of St. Lucia prefer a little cooler YII.
Alan Chastanet.
He's got my support.
You see, no one that has that ability, capability to lead the country. It takes a white man.
I place my support behind the Honorable Prime Minister.
It takes a white man.
That is why I stand here and I say that this Prime Minister is leading this flock of builders.
It takes a white man.
Moi si me vote by un homme blanc, passer by Philippe Jepierre.
Hiller is an educated gentleman. Sometimes they say you can move a man out of an area, but the area never moves out of the guy.
The area never comes out. That's right.
So,
Stevenson King has aged. He's always a dark guy, but he looks a little darker.
Yes.
The Prime Minister, when this man sits here, he's always here. And I deliberately looks into the man's face.
Yes.
His face is like a baby.
Yes.
It takes a white man to pick up St. Lucia from grounds.
Moi si me vote by un homme blanc, passer by Philippe Jepierre.
So folks, that is my closing argument. I am going to the polls because never before have I seen this, and even if it was an undercurrent, I've never seen it extolled. I am going to the polls as the Christopher Hunt that was arrested on my mother's birthday, right? I am going to the polls because I want to vote for I rebuke the slave mentality in St. Lucia. I want to condemn it. I want to repudiate it in the strongest way I can. And that means I am voting for St. Lucia. And I am voting for St. Lucians. I want St. Lucians to come first in our own country. I want a better St. Lucia. But I reject Chastanet's notion of his version of a new St. Lucia. I refuse to become the pearl of the Caribbean, that prostitute. I refuse to acknowledge, to accept. I believe in St. Lucia as the Helen of the West Indies. And I say to Shasney, you personally, hubris is no substitute for compassion and good, sound judgment and thought. Arrogance is no substitute for actual knowledge. And the only thing that you have proven is that everything anybody ever thought about you in the negative, they were correct about. Folks, my time is up. I would take a couple of calls if anybody wants to send final messages, but I've made my closing argument. I'm not dying. I mean, I could be gone tomorrow, but the point is I'm just going off the air. And that is a commitment because there are a lot of United Workers' Party supporters who can't stand me or what it is that I'm doing. If the Labour Party wins, I pledge to you that I will not go out and celebrate. Because for me, what they have won is a humbling chore that of national import to start the process of rebuilding this country, and it will not be easy. If the United Workers' Party wins, as long as the elections are deemed free and fair, I will accept it. I think shows like this need to continue, especially if there is a Freedom of Information Act, because a lot of what went on in this last administration must be vetted by the public, and it also needs to reach the courts. I want to say two things. One, I'm proud of you. St. Lucia, I have learned through this experience, and I'm not trying to be condescending because there are many people who are older. We have grown together. And I will also say that for St. Lucia, as far as I can see, folks, there is a certain triumph and a certain protest that comes with survival. Be proud of yourself that you survived the worst prime minister and the worst government in St. Lucia's history. At least the 79-82 government of the Labour Party had the decency to collapse or to implode. But this cabal, even today, continues to extort the public, plunder the public purse, and continue to rape and scrape everything that they can. We have a job to do, and we need to stand on one side of history or the other. And I'm asking all of you to stand with me. Go out and vote for your country. Vote for yourself. Tell yourself, your forefathers, and the future generations to come that you love yourself and your country. Above all else, good has to triumph in this situation. Now, for those who wonder, yes, I still have my pan. And yes, I will be beating my pan on the election night by myself at my home in the hopes that good will triumph. But make no mistake about it, I also recognize that I will not be governed by Cambridge Analytica's fear or anger. So if things do not go the way that I hope for them to go, I will accept it. I also have other things to catch up on, music, documentary on Libo. I have film projects that I need to do. I have Lucians, the movie. You know how long overdue that is. Look how old I am already. But my fasting will end on 6 o'clock when the polls close on Monday. And the reason that I did this as well is also because I want people to see that there are still St. Lucians who can keep their word. I know it wasn't easy. But if I tell you, between my parents there, especially my father, once he says he's doing something like that, no ifs, ands, or buts. So I emulate as best I can. We have a call. I'll take that one call. Good afternoon, caller. Thank you for calling. Hello? Good afternoon, caller. Okay, I don't think the person is hearing. Okay, well, folks, that will be my time. I'll see you out in the trenches. As a St. Lucian, I'm asking and I'm giving out my number one more time, 758-519-1818. I don't care who you vote for. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your story is. As long as you care about St. Lucia and you need to reach me for anything, anywhere, I am going to try my best to be there. Why? Because that's what I would want from any one of you. So folks, my time is up. And I'll leave you with, well, the movie that's going to start come Monday. I hope that we all go into a new chapter in St. Lucia's history, and I hope that we write and protect St. Lucia's history so that we don't see St. Lucia's history 50 years from now being written in Mandarin. We don't see it being dominated by external forces, and we will have extolled our birthright as the land of the people of light. Have a good one.
Coming soon. St. Lucia's General Elections 2021. Starring Neville Snack, Peter Josie, Clement Charlie Charles, Christopher Hunt, Sir Michael Chasney, Edmund Estefan, Kenny Anthony, Peterson Francis, Champagne, Alva Baptiste, Yadi, Shaheem, Guy Joseph, Stephenson King, Harold Stanislaus, Richard Frederick, KKRR, Alan Chasney, Gail Rickerud, Philip J. Pierre, Bradley Felix, Wayne Girard, and Dominic Fede. Who will win? Who will lose? Coming to a ballot box near you.
The opinions expressed on this TV program by the hosts, co-hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions and responsibility of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of UTV or its affiliates.